All right, well, Republicans met in Miami this week trying to unify the party on one single bill to advance all their key priorities: taxes, spending, border security, all of it. Reconciliation is called. Could this be a rare opportunity to clean up the tax code and reduce the burden of taxation on American families, or could this be another big spending bill that puts us deeper in debt? That is the question before us here today. Joining me now to discuss this is the Executive Vice President at the National Taxpayers Union, Brandon Arnold. Brandon, nice to see you as always. And that's the question. Look, they want to get rid of the debt ceiling for Donald Trump for a while. They say they have to do that in order to be able to have the flexibility to do what needs to be done to bring costs and taxes and the debt and deficit down. I've heard this for my entire life. It rings a bit hollow, I've got to be honest. So what's the truth?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we should lift the debt ceiling unless we get commensurate reductions in federal spending. That has been the best avenue we've had for more than a decade now to get spending reductions into place. They've been modest thus far, but even under Democratic presidents, we got the Budget Control Act of 2011. Under Obama, we got the Fiscal Responsibility Act last year under Biden. You know, these are modest improvements, but at least they're rowing in the right direction occasionally, all thanks to the debt ceiling. So we should not scrap that without major concessions from the left and from, frankly, some moderates in the Republican Party who don't like cutting spending.
Are you concerned, this big reconciliation package? It could be one, it could be two. They're allowed two this calendar year, I believe, if I'm reading the tea leaves and the rules right. Does it give you pause, Brandon, that too much stuff will be stuffed in there again, as has been going on your entire life and mine? Or do you trust the process to have Donald Trump and his people that are mindful, very mindful, of protecting the American taxpayer from more overspending? What do you think happens?
Yeah, I mean, a little of both. I am very worried. I do have some confidence in our congressional leaders and the Trump administration to craft a good bill, but it's inevitable that there's going to be some garbage in there. Our task, of course, is to be a good watchdog over this legislation as it materializes and to make sure we're providing appropriate levels of scrutiny. Because the problem, of course, right now is with such narrow margins in the House in particular, but also in the Senate, every single member of Congress almost has a veto over the entire package. So they can say, hey, we're not going to pass this bill unless you have the SALT provision that gives millions of dollars to people in my district, or this small spending program that only benefits a handful of people in my district. So inevitably, people are going to play their hands aggressively, and it's going to be on us to make sure that we're weaning out some of these bad provisions and to make sure this bill is reducing the deficit, growing the economy, and helping everyday Americans across the board.
Yeah, now, one of the keys, obviously, for people that voted for Donald Trump and for American families in general is the extension of those 2017 tax cuts. It's likely going to be in this reconciliation package. How important is that, Brandon, in the overall scheme of things as far as you're concerned?
It's colossally important. I mean, you talk about the individual level. Back in 2018, when the tax bill took effect, about 80% of Americans received a tax cut. The average tax cut was more than $2,000 a person. If we do not renew this, we're talking about a much smaller child tax credit. We're talking about higher rates for everyday Americans and small businesses. We're talking about a more complex tax code, of course, because the standard deduction was doubled, thus meaning that more than 90% of Americans now can take the standard deduction, a much easier way of filing their taxes than having to itemize and record all of those charitable contributions, mortgage interest, all of the little minutia that goes into doing your taxes. It's much simpler now because of Trump's 2017 tax law. That all gets undone at the end of this year if Congress can't get its act together, get a bill to the president's desk, and see him enacted into law.
Yeah. A long way to go here. Taxpayers, hang on to your wallet. I think it's good news. I hope it's good news. And I want to see those tax breaks continue, that's for sure. I'll give you the last word, Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, what we really need is a unified Congress, a unified president right now. I was hoping that was going to come out of the Miami conversations. There's still a lack of clarity on the process with which they proceed. Getting the budget signed in, implemented, first of all, and getting this massive reconciliation package put together, lowers taxes, addresses the border, drives down the deficit, increases energy production. It's a lot to put on the shoulders of Congress and this president, but let's hope they can get it done.
Let's hope they can get it done. Brandon Arnold, thank you. All right, increased tariffs on our trade.